Hello, everyone. Welcome. Greetings. Happy Black History Month. My name is Michaela. I'm the event coordinator for Sankofa Video on Books. If you don't know about us, we are a small Black owned bookstore located across the street from the School of Business at Howard University. We've been here since 1998 and we specialize in supplying books to the community that are by and about people of African descent, as well as providing programs like this that are for our community. We are so happy to have you tonight for this very special event, which is a part of the Justice for Garvey campaign. If you aren't familiar about that campaign, it is an effort to get 100,000 signatures to exonerate slash pardon the Honorable Marcus Mosiah Garvey. And we'll be learning more about that tonight from his son, Dr. Julius Garvey, whom you'll be hearing from. We'll also be doing a Q&A, so throughout the conversation with our own Kamal Grimes and Dr. Julius Garvey, you can post your questions and we'll answer them towards the end of the program, maybe the last 30 minutes. We're looking to be on for about an hour or maybe a little less. So make sure you post your comments there. And if you want to sign the petition, which we ask that you do, and also share and share and share and share again, I'll have that link in the comments section for you. So without further ado, let me introduce our guests, starting with Dr. Julius Garvey, who is a board-certified cardiothoracic and vascular surgeon who practices in New York. He's affiliated with Northwell Health System and is clinical associate professor of surgery at Albert Einstein College of Medicine. He has been on several educational and medical missions to Ghana, Senegal, Uganda, Mali, Sierra Leone, Jamaica, Haiti, South Sudan, and Ethiopia. He has been internationally schooled in England, Canada, Jamaica, and the United States. He lectures on the life and legacy of his father, the Honorable Marcus Mosiah Garvey. Recently, he delivered the 10th annual Robert Sobukwe Lecture at Fort Hare University at Eastern Cape, South Africa, jointly sponsored by the Steve Biko Foundation. And Justice for Garvey, Redeeming an African Hero, the Legacy and Exoneration of Marcus Garvey is the event we're having here tonight. And he is in conversation with Kamal Grimes, our very own scholar, in-house scholar, who is an educator, and he received his MA in African Studies and Research at the illustrious Howard University. So without further ado, I'm going to bring them on. And remember, sign the petition. The link will be in the comment section. All right. Welcome, Kamal. Welcome, Dr. Garvey.
Thank you for having me, Michaela. And greetings, Kamal.
Thank you. Thank you for that great introduction, Michaela. Thank you for having us. Dr. Garvey, thank you for gracing us with your presence. I know
I guess you
okay. Hopefully I didn't go out on my end. It started buffering for a second, but definitely. I know I've been working with you for the last year or two on a couple different projects, but mainly the project that is of note today is the exoneration. So I want to give people an opportunity to hear you speak on the exoneration and what you hope to achieve with the exoneration. So the first question I would have for you, and then you can kind of take the conversation in direction that you would like. Can you give people a brief background on the trial and why you're seeking exoneration, and also the history of the effort to exonerate Marcus Garvey?
Thanks, Kamal. But the events that we're talking about took place in the 20s, and it's a reflection of what was going on at the time. The Ku Klux Klan was on the rise, and African Americans were being lynched, even those coming back in uniform from the First World War, 1914, 1918. And there were riots, all over the United States. In 1917, there was riots in St. Louis and Philadelphia, etc. 1919 was the Red Summer. 1920 was when they burned down Black Wall Street, with hundreds of casualties, thousands of people left homeless, and destruction of like 10 city blocks of businesses and homes of progressive Black people. So this was the condition that was happening in the United States. And my father, was rallying people, African Americans as well as people around the world, to his organization, which was the Universal Negro Improvement Association and African Communities League, which was the desire in this, post-slavery period to identify what it is we were being free for. We knew what we were being freed from. We were freeing ourselves and liberating ourselves from slavery and from oppression and from sharecropping and from the genocide of the Ku Klux Klan and the lynching, etc. But what were we freeing ourselves to? And obviously, we had to free ourselves to a different system and a different situation. So that was what the purpose of the organization was, the Universal Negro Improvement Association and African Communities League. It was a symbol, basically, of a nation in exile, our unity as a people in terms of our history and our traditions, over time. And it was saying that, we had rights like any other people. And of course, in 1920, the organization had, a meeting of African people from around the world, more than 2,500 delegates that came to New York, the Liberty Hall in New York, and discussed for that August, 30 days about the conditions of African people, and came up with the the rights of the Negro peoples of the world. And that was a statement of our nationhood because it gave us the flag, the red, black, and green flag. It gave us an anthem, like the national anthem. It was Ethiopia, the land of our fathers. And it gave us a holiday to celebrate, which was August the 31st. And it had 54 principles that we were going to live by, and that we're not going to, accept unequal treatment and abusive treatment around the world. So that was the founding of the Pan-African nation of African people worldwide. Well, of course, this was disruptive, shall we say, of the status quo, both in terms of the colonial mentality of the French and the British, who had their empires and their colonies in Africa as well as in the Caribbean, as well as the system within the United States of apartheid and sharecropping, etc. So that caught the attention of J. Edgar Hoover, who at that time was a young lawyer in the Justice Department. And it hadn't yet become the Federal Bureau of Investigation, but he was out to make his name. And he identified Marcus Garvey in an internal memo from 1919 that said there's a Negro agitator up in Harlem. He hasn't done anything yet for us to, charge him with in terms of a federal crime, but we have to find something and somehow we have to get rid of him. Well, of course, in 1919, somebody came into their office, Liberty Hall in Harlem, and shot my dad 4 times, and they got him, and the police got him, but he committed suicide within 24 hours, even though he was in jail. So that shows you that somebody sent him and he was going to spill the beans. And they tried to criminalize my dad, they tried to find tax evasion, but they had to throw out the charges because he didn't even get the salary that the organization was supposed to pay him. They tried to pin charges on him of indecency, so to speak. He would travel extensively around the United States and abroad. He would often have a private secretary, and they would peep through keyholes and so on to see if he was engaging in sexual activity with his secretaries. Of course, they couldn't find anything. Eventually, they came up with this business about the Black Star Line. Of course, they had been harassing him about that. Now, the Black Star Line was a shipping line that was inaugurated by the UNIA ACL at that time in 1919. Ship transportation was primary at that time. You didn't have airplanes, etc., etc. And of course, you had a White Star Line. And of course, black passengers, just like on the buses and on the trains, they were not being treated properly, even though they paid the same, price as the white passengers. And the idea of the Black Star Line was to communicate and link Africans in Africa with those of us in the Caribbean, Latin America, as well as in the United States, in a different kind of triangular trade, so that we could trade and have commerce with each other. And the concept was the raw materials were there in Africa. Those of us in the West had been involved in the industrialization process. We had certain manufacturing skills, and we could therefore use these raw materials and manufacture commodities that we could then trade and be involved with commerce. So, and of course, part of it also was to be able to transport people back and forth. So that was the purpose of the Black Star Line. And of course, this was a major enterprise. And this shall we say, would have been part of the economic foundation of what the organization was trying to build, which is an independent nation and an independent people, not people who are simply assimilated into the body politic of America or the other colonies. So this struck at the heart of empire, shall we say. And therefore, there was the attempt to destroy Marcus Garvey and to destroy the economic basis of his organization, which was the Black Star Line. So J. Edgar Hoover was the perpetrator in this, and they brought these charges against him using the mail to defraud. And of course, it was a completely bogus trial. There was no evidence. There was an empty envelope. There was perjury on the part of the prosecuting attorney, who coached the major witness in perjury. stating that he worked for the UNIA when he never worked for the UNIA, and this was brought out in testimony. Well, I said the only evidence was an empty envelope which contained nothing, and the person who presented the envelope couldn't remember what was in it. So there was nothing to tie my father to anything in terms of using the mail for fraud. So it was a political trial. And the judge should have recused himself because he belonged to a different organization that was a rival to my father. And the same thing with the district attorney. The trial should have been aborted because he committed perjury. So, nevertheless, he was charged and he ended up spending almost 3 years in jail based on that charge. And then it was commuted by Calvin Coolidge, but then under condition he was deported from the country. So that was the idea behind that, was to destroy the UNIA and to destroy the credibility of Marcus Garvey by criminalizing him. And if you look at the trajectory of how the system has worked against any African leader who has stood up, African American leader who has stood up within the country, the same tactics have been used against, Malcolm X, Martin Luther King, the Panthers, and so on. And Black and J. Edgar Hoover and his COINTELPRO, FBI, and COINTELPRO movement has been behind all of that. I mean, the Panthers were assassinated. There's no other way to look at it. And if you look at our population, you see that we're being criminalized as a people because, more than 40% or something, or somewhere around 40% of the prison population are African Americans. Now, that's ridiculous when we only make up 15%. So we get greater jail sentences. We are always being approached as if we're criminals, and we're getting, we're guilty before we're even proven innocent. So it's a system that criminalizes us. And when we do that and to our leaders, then our young people have nothing to look up to. You see, when you criminalize a Garvey, when you criminalize a Malcolm X, when you criminalize a Martin Luther King, because that's what they tried to do. And they were suggesting that he should commit suicide, but because they had some evidence of whatever, they thought they had evidence of infidelity or something like that. So the system then has been trying to destroy us as a people consistently from the birth of the country over time, with its enslavement and with its apartheid system of sharecropping, etc. And it has continued. So, the purpose of what I'm trying to do, and what a lot of us are trying to do, is to right the injustices that have been committed, against us as African people here in the United States. And, this is a case in point where here we had, a thriving organization with membership of 6 million or more, which has never been repeated, in terms of the number of people that belong to an African organization, outside the continent. It's never been repeated. So this was a strong organization that was developing strong African communities with an independent economic base, and this was destroyed. And these are the same people that turn around and say, gee, why don't you lift yourself up by your bootstraps? But every time we try to do that, they burn down the Black Wall Street, they destroy Marcus Garvey, they destroy the UNIA, et cetera, et cetera. So we need to throw light on this. So we've been in the business, shall we say, of trying to exonerate Marcus Garvey, at least since 1987, which was his centennial. And, there are a lot of people have been involved. We appeared before the House Judiciary Committee in 1987 with John Conyers, then the Democrat, was the head of the Judiciary Committee, and we've been involved since then, giving evidence. There are a number of historians, the ambassador from Jamaica, etc., people such as John Henry Clark, and different Congress people over time, have had House resolutions to exonerate Marcus Garvey, but they've never sort of gotten anywhere. And then in 2016, we created a petition, a legal petition, basically, which dissected the trial of 1923 and showed all the evidence that it was a spurious trial, that there was no evidence. And this was done by a major law firm, Aiken Gump Hauer, which is a Washington-based American firm, but it's an international firm. And this was placed before the Obama administration, but they did nothing with it. So we're back again now in terms of the Biden administration, and we're seeking to exonerate Marcus Garvey, because we think that's important for our heroes, that we decide who our heroes are, and the system itself doesn't decide who our heroes are. As you know, the system itself has had many, Southern racists as heroes, and now we're pulling down those statues. Well, we need to put up our own heroes, and certainly, most of us consider Marcus Garvey as, the major Pan-Africanist of the first half of the 20th century, and certainly he's also, one of my heroes. He's my major hero. So, Kamal, that's a brief background in terms of my involvement in trying to exonerate Marcus Mosiah Garvey.
Thank you so much, Dr. Garvey. And that's a perfect segue into discussing all of the literature, that we have on Marcus Garvey. There's a book written by Tony Martin called Marcus Garvey, A Hero. I actually just sold our last physical copy that we had in the store just earlier today. I was going to show it, but I have other books to show. But before I get into that, I want people to actually hear the words of Marcus Garvey. So after this, I would suggest people, one, to go on YouTube, and there's one really famous speech that's on a number of different YouTube channels from Marcus Garvey that I listened to over 10 years ago. And if you listen to that speech and you don't feel like starting, building a black nation, building a United States of Africa, if you're not enthused and excited about winning this war against white supremacy that we have, after listening to that, I don't know what will fire you up. I want to read something from a book here, that one of the books that we have at Sankofa. We have several books on Marcus Garvey, but this book here is called Message to the People, the Course in African Philosophy. And since we are a bookstore, I want to read a portion on page 7 where he talks about how to read. Let's just listen to the words of Marcus Garvey. Use every spare minute you have in reading. If you are going on a journey that would take you an hour, carry something with you to read for that hour until you have reached that place. If you are sitting down waiting for somebody, have something in your pocket to read until that person comes. Don't waste time. Anytime you think you have to waste, put it in reading something. Carry with you a small pocket dictionary and study words while waiting or traveling, or a small pocket volume on some particular subject. Read through at least one book every week, separate and distinct from your newspapers and journals. It will mean that at the end of 1 year, you will have read 52 different subjects. After 5 years, you will have read over 250 books. You may be considered then a well-read man or a well-read woman, and there will be a great difference between you and the person who has not read one book. You will be considered intelligent, and the other person will be considered ignorant. You and the other person, therefore, will be living in two different worlds. And the world of ignorance, and the other, the world of intelligence. Never forget that intelligence rules the world and ignorance carries the burden. Therefore, remove yourself as far away from ignorance as possible and seek as much as possible to be intelligent. So, in light of what Marcus Garvey said, we have several books. In 2021, it's evident that our educational system has done us a disservice if we have to ask the question, who is Marcus Garvey? Okay? So these books will help to answer that question where your education may have failed you. So this book here, like I said, Marcus Garvey, Message to the People, The Course in African Philosophy. We have this book here, wrong way, Philosophy and Opinions of Marcus Garvey. Some may have a different Some may have a different cover. This came out in several different covers. But these two are actually Marcus Garvey's words. I would start with reading his words first, and then moving to what others said about him. So this is selected speeches. Now this book is really good because this book's only $6. All these books I'm putting here are on our website and you can purchase. Then once you get past the books that were written, the words that were written, Marcus Garvey's words himself, then get into some of the things that the family had to say and people close to him. So this is Amy Jacques Garvey, who is Marcus Garvey's second wife and the mother of Dr. Julius Garvey, who we have here, and honestly is extreme. If we have the time, I would like you to a little bit later speak on the work that your mother has done to spread the legacy of Garvey, because I know she was very prominent in doing that, especially to the people of the 60s and 70s. She really helped. If I'm not mistaken, they published Philosophy and Opinions in the early 70s. So there was a wave of this Black consciousness. A lot of what inspired the Black consciousness movement and Black Power movement was people, in a sense, rediscovering Garvey. You have this book, which is also called Garvey and Garveyism, The Antimonies of Black Redemption by C. Boyd James. And we have Marcus Garvey, Anti-Colonial Champion by Rupert Lewis. Black Moses here by E. David Gordon. Chronon, with an forward from John Hope Franklin. And then also it's very important that we get our young people involved into learning about Marcus Garvey. So we do also have children's books. We have this book here. It's a series of books. This one's called Uncle Marcus Activity Book. They have them on all different types of heroes, but just to kind of open the book up a little bit so you can kind of see. You have different activities in the book. Connect the dot, word search, a maze. There's one, Black Star Line. I mean, there's all types of activities, something that will capture the children's mind. We have another activity book here, and I have just two more books to show. This book and one more. One activity book. Word search, all types of things. Connect the dots. You can connect the dots to draw Marcus Garvey. So these are the type of things that young people are interested in. And also, we know that Marcus Garvey's movement was it was a global movement. In fact, universal movement. So here we have a children's book. This is actually, look at how they spell Marcus Garvey, because this is in Haitian Creole. This is a book written in Haitian Creole, children's book written on Marcus Garvey. So just to show that there's several, and there's way more. Some of the books we've sold out right now, we have way more. But that can be a jumpstart to your Garvey education. I have a question for Dr. Garvey, but I wanted to read just one more quote from Marcus Garvey on public speaking. Elocution. This is a word that we don't really use too often anymore. But this will be a good segue into another project that we're going to continue for the rest of the month that I'll talk about at the end. So this is on page 38 of the Message to the People. Elocution means to speak out. That is to say, if you have a tale to tell, tell it and tell it well. The idea of speaking is to convey information to others. Therefore, you must speak so that they may hear you. You must speak with dignity, eloquence, clearness, and distinctiveness. You must speak to be understood in the language that you speak. You must carry emphasis when you speak. To be a good elocutionist, you must embody yourself, clearness of thought, expression, and action. You must embody in yourself clearness of thought, expression, and action. First, you must feel what you speak as you feel it. Express it in the like manner. If you feel the enthusiasm of a thing, express it with enthusiasm. Speech and truth should be your feelings on all things. Speak and truth should should be just your feelings on all things. If you speak oddly or without emphasis, it is because you feel oddly and not moved to action. Every man who does not every man who is not tongue-tied by nature can speak. God gave him a voice for that purpose. Therefore, if you have anything to say it out loud so that others may hear you. And I want to get into this briefly, but he has even practical announcements here too. It says, in addressing a crowd of people in a small room, you must raise your voice to reach the person farthest away from you in the room. If you are addressing 100 people, you should raise your voice loud enough in expressing yourself so that the person sitting farthest away from you will hear every word distinctly and in like manner. If you have an audience of 1,000, 2,000, or 5,000, if you stand up on a platform in front of an audience of 1,000 and address them in the voice you would use for an audience of 12 feet by 12 feet, the people 12 feet away from you will not hear you, and those farthest away from you will have to strain their ears to hear and understand you. They will become disgusted and walk out on you. And then he just goes on, but he gives very practical advice on reading, on elocution, presentation, and above all, one of the things that really shines bright with Garvey is dignity. He helped to restore dignity for us as a people. So it's something that we could be proud of. We can be proud of ourselves, and we can straighten up our backs and hold our heads high. Not that we're better than anyone, but that we are just as good as anyone else. So listening to Marcus Garvey, reading his words, we have decided at Sankofa to conduct a speech contest for children, a Marcus Garvey speech contest for children. And we want people to use the hashtag Justice for Garvey. So we're going to be sending out some more information about this, but people should film their children, using one of these books. They should recite really short passages from this book, Philosophy and Opinions, selected speeches. We want to hear the words of Garvey coming from, as they say, the mouth of babes, because we have to teach the next generation. And somehow, we used to do these speech contests, in church, and especially in the previous generation. So we've kind of gotten away from that. So we want to get back to that. Now that I segue back into talking about the children, I want to segue back to Dr. Garvey. And I want to ask you a question about your childhood. I know your father had you he was more advanced in age, and you only had him for a brief time in the physical form. But I would like for you to reminisce on maybe some of your fondest childhood memories with your father, and share that side with our audience, because this is something that we wouldn't ever be able to get insight into.
Well, my father, last time I saw my father, I was 5 years old, and he died when I was seven years of age. So basically, my mother, raised me, and she was very much his shadow, if you will, or his twin, because she was beside him for all of his life after the marriage, and in that she was a private secretary. She did the woman's page of the Negro World. She mothered his two children, and she was obviously a wife to him. She collected his speeches and what he had written, and published the Philosophy and Opinions of Marcus Garvey, volumes 1, 2, and 3. And she taught so many young scholars, people such as Rupert Lewis, as you mentioned, Tony Martin, and others who came to find out, what was the movement all about in terms of her own experience, in terms of the inside of what was happening back then in the 20s. So she was, a preeminent person in terms of raising us to be children of Marcus Garvey, both myself and my brother. So she always, taught us about who he was and what we should be, gave us an idea of what we should be as young Africans, in terms of the concept of Pan-Africanism and the unity of African people. So she was, growing up, my most direct inspiration in terms of my father's ideas, which are transmitted through her to me. And I can say the same thing for my brother.
I definitely, yeah. Sorry about that mute. You answered the question about your mother, but we had someone else in the chat had a question. Did you have a favorite quote from your father?
Well, one that's very popular certainly is, we must liberate our minds from mental slavery, because while others may help us liberate the body, none but ourselves can liberate the mind. And another one is, if you have no confidence in self, you're defeated in the race of life. But with confidence, you've won even before you've started. Another one would be, God and nature first made us what we are, then out of our own creative genius, we make ourselves what we want to be. And so, let the sky and God be our measure, and eternity, our measurement. So those are just some of the quotes that, Marcus Garvey um, are, is well known for, because he had a lot of pithy sayings like that really carried a great deal of philosophy behind them. And it's important, to understand many of the things that he said, and I would say contemplate over them in terms of, let's say, simply repeating a quotation, like, for example, liberate your minds from mental slavery. Well, we can look back in terms of the system that many of us have joined, so to speak, in terms of our educational process. We're being educated by the same, system that dehumanized us. And, we have to look back at Carter G. Woodson talking about the miseducation of the Negro. That was, and so we have to understand that's really what Marcus Garvey is talking about in that quotation, to liberate our minds. We can't liberate our minds when we're being miseducated. So we have to create our own educational system that tells us about who we are, tells us about our history, tells us about what we have been. And again, another quote more or less is that, history is the lens through which we look at the future. So we have to know our history, and we have to be educated. Education is the process by which, people are taught about their past and their destiny and so on. So, those quotations have so much in them that we need to contemplate them and unravel them in terms of our own mental processes. And then we can see how they apply to the circumstances of today. And that's why you need programs such as what you have come out. That's why we need bookstores such as what you have, because the kids are not going to learn this in school. As you know, there's all this nonsense now about critical race theory, and all that means that it's stupid. It doesn't mean anything, because all it is that people don't want to learn the truth. So they continue to hide. They don't want to see themselves in the mirror of fact and truth in terms of, what past experience has been and what they've done to other people, in terms of the genocide against the Native American, in terms of our enslavement and our butchery, the number of lynchings that have taken place, and our marginalization, and what continues to happen in terms of police brutality and imprisonment and so on. So we have to liberate our minds, and then we have to teach, others in terms of liberating their minds. So education is a key for all of us in terms of self-education, and then in terms of spreading the word, so to speak, in terms of our history, our traditions, our culture, and what we have to create in order to be truly liberated. We cannot join the system as it exists because that's the system that has dehumanized us.
Yes, I agree totally. And you made me think. All when we asked the question about the quotes, reminded me we have this soccer ball here. Camera, right? Is a person who's developed this soccer ball, and it has all these different quotes from Marcus Garvey on the ball.
Mm.
So I'm going the wrong way. So okay, one God, one aim, one destiny. You see the red, black, and green flag. Even a couple of the quotes that Dr. Garvey said was on here. Read one. Yeah. Chance has never yet satisfied the hope of a suffering people. I mean, we can't leave this stuff up to chance. We have to make sure we get our redemption. It's not a luck of the draw. It's what we do. It says there is nothing in the world common to man that man cannot do, which means if another man did it, then we can do it. No one is greater than us. Progress is the attraction that moves humanity. People love this one. Up, you mighty race. You accomplish what you will. Africa for the Africans, those at home and those abroad. And this is one that's a message that we really need. I'll read two more. I could read all these all day, but I'll just read these two more. This is a message that we really need today. Somehow we haven't gotten over this yet. This whole issue of colorism. But it says the black skin is not a badge of shame. I'm just going to read that again. I think we know that in our mind, but sometimes emotionally, it still gets to us. So the black skin is not a badge of shame, but rather a glorious symbol of national greatness. I just want that one to sink in. And then, of course, a people without their knowledge of their past history, origins, and culture is like a tree without its roots. And our bookstore is called Sankofa, which means technically it literally means go back and fetch it, but operationally it means you have to return to the past, gather those useful things from the past, learn the lessons from the mistakes of the past, and bring all of that knowledge from the knowledge of the past success, knowledge of the past failures, bring that knowledge into the future. And so that's similar to the quote that Dr. Garvey said earlier, which was history is the lens through which we see the future. And that's basically
That's also what redemption means when we talk about the redemption of Africa. Redeem means to go back and bring it forward, what you've learned from the past. So it's the same as Sankofa. Yeah.
Exactly. So we're in the process of synchronicity. You know, many of the things that you see today, the efforts to Buy Black campaign, efforts for sovereignty, Kwanzaa. There's so many different efforts that we've done, and they're all built on Marcus Garvey. He inspired Martin Luther King, Malcolm X, Elijah Muhammad, Kwame Nkrumah, several other Jomo Kenyatta, and it was Garvey and the UNIA who first envisioned the United States of Africa, which we're still working towards, but the manifestation of that, the highest manifestation of that right now is the African Union. Kwame Nkrumah, in fact, included the Black Star in the flag of Ghana specifically to pay homage to Marcus Garvey. And in 2019, we had the Year of Return, people going back to Ghana. Oftentimes, people look at the Garvey movement as the Back to Africa movement. And that was one aspect of the movement, but definitely was about economic empowerment, sovereignty, solidarity as a people. And so this whole effort of 2019, the Year of Return, back to Africa. So we're right back in Garveyism. We're right back to Garvey. I had one more question for Dr. Garvey. Please, if anyone has any other questions, please put them in the chat. We have about 15 minutes or so left in the conversation if we need that. But definitely, please put your questions in the chat. We did. Okay. What books? Someone has a question. Which books on Marcus Garvey would you recommend, Dr. Garvey?
Well, I would say anything by, Tony Martin. You can look up Tony Martin, look at all of his books. Same thing with Rupert Lewis. He has written extensively. Those are the two of the best historians. And then there's one by Adam Ewing, Ewing. That's Global Garveyism. And that sort of brings everything up to date. And it looks at Garveyism from the global perspective, which is what, some of the other people who have written have not really understood, because very often people say, "Oh, okay, he was deported from the U.S. in 1927," and it's as if to say he fell off the world, but he didn't. He continued his work in Jamaica. Rupert Lewis talks a lot about that, and he developed the first political party there. He ran for office. He developed the first labor union and so on. And then he moved to England in 1935. And, that's when he developed that course in African philosophy. And he used to travel to Canada annually, and they still had these meetings of the UNIA. I think there were two in Jamaica, and there may have been two or three in Canada. So the whole thing continued. And it was a global movement. It wasn't just an American civil rights movement in that sense. And a lot of people don't know that. So Adam Ewing's book, Global Garveyism, is a very good one from that perspective. But I just mentioned, Tony Martin and Rupert Lewis are really, really excellent in terms of that. John Henry Clark has also done one, which he did with my mother. Marcus Garvey, what's it called?
It's Marcus Garvey and the Vision of Africa.
The Vision of Africa, right?
Yeah.
So that's good reading material right there.
Definitely. And as you can see, Michaela has included in the chat Sankofa's collection. All those books that Dr. Garvey named, we do have, even the ones I didn't show you. We do have
3 volumes of the philosophy and opinions. A lot of people don't know that there's a third volume, but that was done with my mother and Essian Udam, which was a Nigerian scholar.
All right, excellent. Looks like we have one more question in the chat. Someone says, can we hear more about how we can get involved with the exoneration? And also, what does Dr. Garvey foresee will happen to the global Black consciousness once Marcus Garvey is exonerated?
Well, you need to go to the website, justiceforgarvey.org. Justice, the number 4, Garvey.org, and you'll find a link to the petition, which takes you to the White House, and they'll ask you the question, who do you want to talk to, so to speak, and it will be President Biden, not the Vice President, it will be the President, and then they'll ask you for personal information, which is the second question, and you have to give your name and you have to give your address. And by the way, you don't have to be a citizen. You don't have to worry about that. But I need to give personal information. And then the next thing, they ask you, what do you want to say to the president? And then you say, exonerate Marcus Garvey. So you go to the website, justice, the number 4, Garvey.org. You'll find the link there. And when you go on the link, then you'll be able to speak to the president. I've done it, and I got back a letter or email from the president saying, that we appreciate your concern and so on and so forth. I mean, this is really an automatic response, but it's working and it's simple to do, and we're urging everybody to do that. We need 100,000 signatures in the month of February in order to get the president to respond. And as I mentioned, that we did this in 2016, Obama didn't respond, and we just did it from the legal perspective. Now we're doing it from the perspective of a large number of individuals who are requesting the president to respond, to give an answer. Why not exonerate Marcus Garvey? Either exonerate him or don't. If you're not going to do it, then you have to answer to the people as to why. So justiceforgarvey.org, go there, you'll find the link. and you follow those 3 steps. You want to talk to the president, you give your personal information, and then when they say, what do you want to tell the president? Exonerate Marcus Garvey.
Yes, and also the Black bookstore ecosystem. That means Black publishers, Black bookstores, and Black booksellers have really taken up the charge to spread the word. So not only Sankofa, but many other bookstores are involved, and they're spreading it far and wide. So you even on a lot of our websites, we have a link that also takes you to the Justice for Garvey. So there's many different ways to get to it. At Sankofa, we do have the flyers here with a QR code. If you're in the store, you can just scan the code and you can go sign. I'll answer this question quickly about there's a brother who wanted to know, is the U.S. the only practitioners of Black History Month? What I know is that I know England, they have a Black History Month in the UK, but it's not the same month. I believe it's in the fall. And you don't have to be in the U.S. to practice Black History Month. I don't know any other countries, but I'm sure.
Well, the Caribbean has it, and they practice it the same in February. Yes.
Okay, so that's the answer to the question. Yes, other places are celebrating Black History Month, but here at Sankofa,
Canada is the same month as well. I'm not so sure it's the same month, but Canada does have it.
Okay, Canada has a month as well.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so and it's 365 days a year, 24/7 Black History.
Absolutely, you're right. Come on.
Yes. So in February, yes, the month it's in February in terms of the Caribbean. You might have to do a little bit more research to find out the months for Canada and England. Good Pharaoh, the brother who asked the question.
Yeah, I think that October is England.
Yeah, from my memory, it's October.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I had a this will probably be my last question.
Yeah, we need to wrap it up.
Yeah, this will be my last question, and it's just, what is your message to the young people of today? How can they?
The young people, the future is in your hands. But unquestionably. You look at me. How many more years do I have on planet Earth? The best that I can do is try to educate you or inform you in terms of my own experience. But traditions passed down from generation to generation. My parents inspired me. Hopefully your parents inspire you. Hopefully I am inspiring you. So you have to take up the baton, and you have to look at history from the long view. And that's why it's important for you to be educated. Because again, we go back to that quote, that history is the lens through which we look at the future. But we don't keep reliving the past. You have to learn from the past and then use it for the future. So you have to know your history and know what's good about your history and what's good about your traditions and what you don't need anymore in terms of your current set of circumstances. And then you need to know what it is that you want to create, because there are always going to be obstacles. But if you know what it is that you want to create, then you can overcome the obstacles. You don't necessarily have to keep fighting at the obstacles. You don't have to necessarily keep fighting at the races, but you have to create your own system, because you can see beyond the obstacle, and that's how you overcome. You have to understand what it means. We shall overcome. We shall jump over it. We shall go around it. We can go through it. You see, we don't have to get stuck with it. It's like people who say that they're anti-war, but then all they're doing is fighting against war. No, but if you're really anti-war, then you have to be pro-peace. And you have to be peace. And you have to spread peace. That's what it means, really, to be anti-war. So that's also what it means to be anti-racist, or it means to be anti-white supremacist. It really means to be pro yourself. And then manifest who you are and what you think is the right thing to do. So you have to get to that level of understanding and that level of commitment. And it's all there in terms of the example of our ancestors. We've been fighting, certainly, for the last 400, 500 years in terms of our liberation. And the only way we've been able to survive is because we've been using the lessons of the past, the lessons from Kemet. And that understanding of what Ma'at is, what Ubuntu is, and we're bringing that forward. For example, in terms of Kwanzaa and the Nguzo Saba and those principles of self-determination, cooperative work and responsibility, collective economics, and so on. So those are the principles that you need to follow in terms of, manifesting yourself as an African person, either living in the United States or wherever you live in the world. I've always felt that I was African when I was living in Jamaica, or I went to school in Canada, or here in the United States, or wherever I travel. I'm an African person, because I have that history, I have those traditions, and that's who I am. And I'm so thankful of my gene pool. And don't forget, you were the first manifestation of humanity, Homo sapiens sapiens, 200,000 years ago. And you bear the first civilizations in terms of Kemet and Nubia and Kush and Ethiopia. So you have a lot to be proud of. And you have a lot to manifest in terms of reconstructing and redeeming and Sankofa our history and our civilization. So the future is in your hands.
I couldn't have said it any better myself, Dr. Garvey. Thank you for your time. Thank you for your energy. Thank you for your support. Thank you for continuing to be on the case to uplift the race, on the case to unify people and to exonerate and rightfully redeem your father's legacy. I mean, for those who don't know, Marcus Garvey is the first national hero of Jamaica. And they also have a statue of him in the Organization of American States here in Washington, D.C. So his legacy has been honored far and wide. And these are only two of the types of honors. I mean, there's plenty of schools named after him, names of streets, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And so the U.S. government has to catch up to where the people are. The people have proclaimed Marcus Garvey as their hero, and we need his name to be clear. All right. So justiceforgarvey.org. Go sign the petition. Reach out to Joe Biden. And this is my first time ever writing the president. And I may write him again when something, if I have anything else on my mind, because now it's started to get me, got the wheels turning. So let's be engaged, folks. Thank you so much, Dr. Garvey.
Thank you for having me, Kamal.
All right. Yes, Michaela, we are come to a close.